we live really simple. Our house it's not real cluttered, doesn't have a lot of stuff. Everything we get, we sell. So it's hard to walk through all of the storage.
So you won't go
buy.
from storage wars to hoarders?
No.
Jarrod Schulz disappeared from storage wars, and what happened next changed everything fans thought they knew. Introduced as one half of the young guns on Storage Wars, Jarrod Schulz built his reputation alongside Brandi Passante through years of bidding, business, and on-screen chemistry. But after the show's hiatus, their relationship ended, legal trouble followed, and his public presence quickly faded. So what really happened to Jarrod Schulz after Storage Wars? And why has he become so difficult to track in recent years? Join us as we uncover what happened to Jarrod Schulz, the life that the show almost didn't mention. Jarrod Schulz was in his early 20s when he had his first serious encounter with the law. In January 1997, he was arrested for felony possession of a controlled substance, specifically methamphetamine. He pleaded guilty and received a 60-day sentence, of which he served a portion before being released on probation. What happened next defined the first chapter of his adult life. Within a week of his release from that sentence, he was arrested again while driving under the influence and in possession of narcotics for transport. The judge who handled the second case was not persuaded by any argument in Schulz's favor. The second charge, combined with the fact that he had just completed a sentence for a substantially similar offense, resulted in a sentence of 16 months in California State Prison. He served that sentence. A source speaking to Reality Weekly in 2012, 2 years into Storage Wars' run, described what those 16 months were like for Jarrod from the inside. Living alongside the murderers and molesters made him realize he was going down the same path. The source was careful to frame it as a situation of trajectory rather than character. He was not a bad guy. He had gone through a dark few years, and drugs were at the root of both the circumstances and the decisions. When Jarrod got out of prison, he appeared to have made the decision to redirect his life towards something legitimate. He built a career in resale and thrift, eventually meeting Brandi Passante and establishing the now and then thrift store business that the show would later document. The criminal history from the 1990s was something he acknowledged vaguely in interviews without ever fully unpacking it, which was a reasonable choice for a man trying to define himself differently from who he had been in his early 20s. The problem is that the pattern that it established did not fully resolve itself when his life changed. Storage Wars premiered on December 1st, 2010. Jarrod was 33 at the time, old enough to have a decade of distance from the prison sentence and young enough to project the energy the show needed him to have. He and Brandi were labeled the young guns from the beginning, partly because they were genuinely younger than most of the other bidders, and partly because they had the specific quality of people who are still figuring it out in public, rather than performing competence they have already mastered. They owned thrift stores, and they knew resale. What they did not have was the auction experience of someone like Dave Hester or the encyclopedic collector knowledge of Barry Weiss. That gap was part of the show. Watching them learn while being in the middle of it, while also managing a relationship, 2 children, and a business, was what made the format work for them across 13 seasons. The show documented the public version of Jarrod and Brandi. What it did not fully document was the private version, including when the relationship ended and exactly what it looked like when it did. The cameras kept rolling. The audience kept watching. And then the hiatus came. The relationship ended during it. And season 13 arrived with a revelation that changed how everyone had been reading the previous seasons. What actually happened between Jarrod and Brandi, and when did the show find out? What the audience did not know. Storage Wars went on an extended hiatus after season 12, which premiered in November 2018. The show was off the air for approximately 2.5 years while A and E made decisions about the format and the future of the series. During that hiatus, Jarrod and Brandi ended their relationship. They had been together for years and had 2 children, a son named Cameron and a daughter named Peyton, but they had never married, despite being frequently referred to on the show and by fans as husband and wife. The breakup was not publicized at the time. The audience had no way of knowing. When Storage Wars returned with Season 13 in April 2021, the first episode featured Brandi's direct revelation. "I'm not with Jarrod anymore." She added that she had ended the relationship after they completed filming the 12th season. The audience was being told, in the season premiere, about something that had happened in 2018. The choice to delay that announcement, to continue filming Season 13 together while the relationship was already over and the audience did not know, speaks to the specific awkwardness of the position they were in as co-stars of an ongoing show. Their professional obligation to the series existed separately from whatever was happening in their personal lives, and so they showed up to do their jobs while quietly carrying a situation that the show's format required them not to fully address until the premiere could use it as content. When Brandi eventually described the breakup, she framed her own freedom from the relationship in terms that did not require the audience to fill in every detail. A tattoo she unveiled in October 2021, the word "free" with a sparrow flying away, captioned with a statement about escaping a difficult situation that many people fall victim to, and being grateful for the life she gets to live without fear, said considerably more than any interview she gave about the specifics. On the show itself, Season 13 followed both of them separately, without the shared storyline that their partnership had provided in previous seasons. For Jarrod, Season 13 was the last. When Season 14 premiered, he was not in it. Brandi continued. A&E launched an investigation into Jarrod's future on the show after the bar incident in April 2021, during the same period that Season 13 was airing. The investigation was not publicly concluded with a formal announcement. The outcome was simply that Jarrod was not in the next season. He has not been on the show since. Brandi remained through Season 16, which aired in 2025, including episodes that brought a new 1-hour format to the bidding sequences. The show continued without him in the same way that rooms continue after a person has left them. Recognizably the same space, just with the specific energy of that person no longer in it. Jarrod left Storage Wars at the same time that his personal legal situation was deteriorating. The bar incident in April 2021 was not the beginning of his legal troubles after the show ended. It was the most visible one, but it was preceded by a different charge in 2019 and followed by a DUI charge in 2021. By the summer of 2023, all 3 cases were heading toward a combined trial date. What happened at that Orange County bar in April 2021? What were the other charges? And what did the legal trajectory of this period look like from start to finish? The Legal Reckoning. On April 30th, 2021, Brandi Passante was out at a bar in Orange County with friends. Jarrod Schulz arrived. The two got into a heated argument. Brandi told him to leave. He did not leave. According to law enforcement sources who spoke to TMZ at the time, Jarrod began yelling at Brandi and her friends, and then pushed her twice. Police were called to the bar. By the time they arrived, Jarrod had already left. Officers took a report from Brandi and tracked Jarrod down a few days later for questioning. He denied having touched her. His account of the evening did not persuade the Orange County District Attorney's Office. On May 16, 2021, the DA charged Jarrod Schulz with 1 count of misdemeanor domestic violence battery. A&E, which was actively airing Season 13 at the time, launched an internal investigation. Neither Jarrod nor Brandi issued any formal public statements about the incident. The April 2021 incident was the most prominent of three separate criminal cases Jarrod was managing simultaneously in the post-show period. The first had occurred in July 2019, when he was charged with resisting an officer following an incident in Lake Forest, California. The full details of that incident were never fully reported, and the charge remained open into 2023 as the cases accumulated. The third charge arrived in late 2021, a DUI with a blood alcohol content of 0.08% or more. By the time all three charges had been filed and were working through the Orange County court system, Jarrod was simultaneously managing the domestic violence battery case, the resisting an officer case, and the DUI case. Court records confirmed that all three cases were consolidated and heading for a combined jury trial scheduled for June 20th, 2023. That trial date was then pushed back to July 2023, with the battery case carrying its own pre-trial hearing on July 18th, a jury trial scheduled for July 24th, and the DUI and resisting an officer cases proceeding to their own pre-trial hearings on July 24th. The outcomes of those July 2023 proceedings were not publicly reported in the same detail as the initial charges had been covered. Jarrod made no public statements about the cases in that period. His social media had been largely inactive since 2022, when he posted a photo with Rochelle Beckman, the woman he had been seen with since around 2021, and did not update publicly after that. The three criminal cases that arrived between 2019 and 2021 were the most concentrated period of legal trouble Jarrod had experienced since the drug sentences of the 1990s, and they coincided almost exactly with the period in which his television career ended. The 2019 resisting an officer charge arrived the year after the relationship ended, and the show went on hiatus. The 2021 domestic violence charge arrived while season 13 was on the air. The DUI arrived before any of those cases had been resolved. The pattern of his 20s was not precisely repeating itself, but it was rhyming. Brandi's public response to the period was more visible than Jarrod's. She described escaping a difficult situation in a way that made the tattoo she posted carry more weight than a simple declaration of personal freedom. She moved on into new relationships, posted regularly on social media, returned to Storage Wars through multiple subsequent seasons, and in 2024 shared photos with a new partner, realtor Clifford Beaver, and posted birthday wishes that included personal moments from their relationship. Whatever the year between 2018 and 2021 had looked like in private, by 2024, she was publicly thriving. Jarrod, by contrast, had become very quiet indeed. The charges were filed, the trial dates were set, and then moved. Social media went inactive. The relationship with Rochelle Beckman was evident in one photo, and then nothing further. What has Jarrod Schulz actually been doing? What happened to the businesses he was building after the show ended? And where does everything stand as of 2025 and 2026? After the show, the bar, the brand, and the silence. When Jarrod's time on Storage Wars ended, he had already identified his next professional direction: the hospitality industry. He became the owner of the Rush Bar and Grill in Lake Forest, California, a neighborhood bar and grill that offered a transition from the thrift and resale world he had occupied during the Storage Wars years. The bar was promoted on social media at its opening, with Jarrod photographed at events, including a St. Patrick's Day promotion, which appears to be among his last public social media activities. The Rush Bar and Grill gave him a business that did not depend on the show's ongoing success and did not require the kind of public personality maintenance that social media demands of former reality television personalities who want to stay relevant. It was a brick-and-mortar operation in the community he lived in, which suited the low public profile he appeared to want to maintain. Before the bar, Jarrod had also been developing a fashion brand called Outlaw Apparel, which drew on the specific personality he had cultivated on Storage Wars. The edgy, risk-taking, slightly rough-around-the-edges identity that the Young Guns branding had started building when the show began. Outlaw Apparel was promoted on social media alongside his Storage Wars presence and had a dedicated website. By 2024, the website domain was listed for sale on GoDaddy. Anyone who clicked on a link to Outlaw Apparel was redirected to a domain purchase page. The social media accounts for the brand had not been updated in years. This is the specific texture of a business that has wound down without a formal announcement. The domain available, the social pages inactive, the merchandise no longer moving. Outlaw Apparel had been the public-facing expression of an identity Jarrod built during the show's run. By 2024, it was a URL for sale on a domain registrar's marketplace. Jarrod's personal social media followed a similar trajectory. His Instagram's last known post was in 2022 and showed him with Rochelle Beckman. He stopped posting on X in 2017. His Facebook activity was similarly sparse, with the profile photo set to an image of him and Beckman, and the content updates infrequent and eventually stopped. In 2025, he was described across multiple outlets as lying low, which is the diplomatic phrase for a person who was very publicly present and has since chosen, or been forced, to become very publicly absent. Whether the choice was deliberate or was driven by the accumulating legal and personal circumstances is not possible to determine from the outside. What is visible is the absence itself. No posts, no interviews, no statements about the charges or their outcomes, no new projects announced, no return to television. Storage Wars itself continued past his departure with a thoroughness that makes the before and after easy to see. Brandi returned for Season 13, Season 14, Season 15 in 2023, and Season 16 in 2025, including episodes shot in a new one-hour format. The show added new cast members, adjusted its presentation, and maintained its core audience on A&E. Jarrod was simply not in any of it after Season 13. His absence was noted at first, then normalized, then forgotten, except by the portion of the audience that remembered the show from its earliest seasons and still occasionally searched for his name to find out what had happened to the person they had watched for a decade. Where do things stand with Jarrod's legal situation? Things aren't looking good for Jarrod Schulz. The pattern that reasserted itself in the years after the show ended is more complicated to account for. The resisting an officer charge in 2019 came 1 year after the relationship ended. The domestic violence charge in 2021 came the same year the breakup became public. The DUI came the same year the criminal cases were stacking up. A television career built on the public image of a couple working together in a scrappy, charming way was dissolving as the private reality of that relationship became more visible. Brandi's tattoo said something. The charges said something. The social media silence said something. None of it adds up to a simple narrative about a villain or a victim. What it adds up to is a person under significant pressure, in multiple directions simultaneously, making choices that made things worse rather than better. By 2026, Jarrod Schulz had not returned to television, released any public statement about his legal cases, resumed a regular social media presence, or announced any new professional project following the apparent closure of Outlaw Apparel. His relationship with Rochelle Beckman, which had been the one new visible development in his personal life after the breakup with Brandi, had not been publicly confirmed or updated since the 2022 Instagram post. The Rush Bar and Grill in Lake Forest, was the last documented ongoing professional activity. He was 47 years old. He had 2 children with Brandi, with whom any co-parenting relationship was presumably continuing in private. And the show that had made him recognizable had moved on without him through multiple subsequent seasons, while its core audience got used to a version of Storage Wars that no longer included Jarrod Schulz. Things are not looking good for Jarrod Schulz in the specific sense that the visible indicators are pointing in directions that are not positive. Legal cases, a brand that appears to have closed without announcement, a social media presence that has gone silent, and a television career that ended without a formal farewell. Whether what is happening out of the public eye is better or worse than what the visible indicators suggest is genuinely not knowable from the outside. People do not always announce their recoveries the way they announce their falls. The cameras that made Jarrod visible for over a decade are no longer pointed at him, which means the only version of his story available to the audience is the one that got documented before the silence arrived. That version is not a good story at this point. Do you think Jarrod Schulz deserves a second chance at television? And do you think there is any version of Storage Wars that works without him and Brandi together on the show? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.